Tinker, Celestial Lancer, Necromancer. These are but a few possible classes that could be coming to World of Warcraft. Let's talk about it. Hello everybody, I am Jmulls of Jmulls Gaming, and it seems that a survey for World of Warcraft has leaked, with possible new classes that could be implemented in the future for World of Warcraft. Now, the original survey was in freaking German, but thankfully, Enrif over on MMO Champions forums was able to translate this. But I'll leave a link in the description to his translation, but also the Chromie.de article. Now, off rip, I just want to say, I don't put much stock in any of this, and I view it more so than just idle speculation, but I still think it is speculation at the end of the day. It's just Blizzard probably testing out what people are more receptive to, not necessarily that they have anything already set in stone. But these are the possible ideas. And there are quite a few of them, so sit back, relax, and let's get into it. First up, we have Prismatic. As heirs to Titanic power, Prismatics are carriers of cosmic powers that can only be used in their purest forms, but their transcending powers can be merged to new powers. They refine and focus the power of life to heal allies, or the power of order to protect themselves, or they merge the combined powers of death and shadow to deal damage to enemies. Pretty vague to me, but could be interesting enough. Now the big one though, one of the big ones, is quite a few, Bard. And I quite like the twist that Bard here has compared to a lot of other, say, fantasy bards. Supporter, healer, and tanks, they utilize the Song of Azeroth to cast mighty spells, support their allies, and weaken their enemies. Bards shine in a group, empowering and improving the spells of others, and at the same time bringing numerous songs and auras to help their group reach new heights. So, in essence, a support-based class. And instead of just busting out Piano Man or whatever, I like the fact that the idea here is that they could be utilizing the actual Song of Azeroth, which is one of the big plot points right now with the War Within. Azeroth crying out for help, pretty much, and using that song, in essence, to be a class. I think that has really unique and interesting implementation potential for World of Warcraft, and especially with the modern lore. Though I imagine once the World Soul Saga is wrapped up, not entirely sure which Song of Azeroth they're going to be utilizing. Who knows, maybe they can lip sync it. As others have kind of pointed out, some of these sound like they would fit hero talents more so than they would fit an entire class, and I think Gunna, the next up, is one of those. Quick, offensive, ranged combat characters that wield two pistols at the same time. They apply different elemental effects to their weapons to create the deadliest arsenal of destruction against their foes. To me, that could easily just be like a hunter or something, since hunters already use guns. Maybe if you really want to stretch it, rogue as well with outlaw, but I kind of doubt that one. I'm not going to get too hung up on specific wording because it could just be translation error or whatever. Or again, just them being speculative. It's highly possible Gunna could just dual wield the existing gun archetype of weapon. I don't know, could be rather interesting. Next up is Astrology, which, as a Final Fantasy XIV player, couple of these Blizzard, bit on the nose, don't you think? Though I can't say I particularly mind. Astrology, mighty spellcasters that use the cosmic powers of the stars and gravity to deal devastating damage. They utilize celestial energies to cast spells, manipulate gravitational fields, summon meteor swarms, and create star explosions. Does kind of just sound like some mage spells thrown together, right? Like meteor swarm just sounds like meteor, but also fused with Comet Storm. Though, hey, an actual DPS Astrologian sounds kind of up my alley, rather interesting. Does fit in line with the theme of the World Soul Saga, light versus dark, and then in the Last Titan being very Titan, centric. That could work. I think it could fit very well in the World of Warcraft lineup of classes. Would be cool to see. Then there's the other section of the survey where they rattle off a few other class concepts. Some of them were the existing ones already, so I'll just skip the repeats. But you have things like Apothecary, masters in the creation of potions and brews, which they use to harm enemies and empower and heal allies. They create unique combinations of elements, give potions of varying effects, be it explosive, toxic, or granting extreme power. If you've ever run Icecrown Citadel before, you will be very familiar with what some Apothecary stuff in World of Warcraft is capable of. Can't say it would be high up in my personal wish list of classes, but again, this is one of those that could work in World of Warcraft. I'm just not sure necessarily how big of an audience there would be, or like how much hype this one would generate compared to, say, Astrology or whatever the heck Prismatic was, or Bard, or even Gunna at that point. One that could generate quite a bit of hype, though, is Witch. Witches are everywhere in World of Warcraft, especially if you played Alliance back in BFA with Drustfall, which they talk about here. Damage dealers and healers that use old magic to reach towards darker natural powers. Their magic includes curses, familiars, rituals, spiritual connections, poisons, decays, and more. This class builds onto the teachings of witches and dark magicians of World of Warcraft, including the witches of Drustfall, the Gilnean Harvest witches, the decayed gnolls, and troll hexes and spirit magic. Very broad, and I think the fact that witch is so broad in its idea and what it could possibly encapsulate makes it feel like it would be more of a class instead of, say, a hero talent, because you could easily have one of the specs be like based in the Drustvar, another one based in like troll, voodoo, and stuff like that, even though some other classes technically have some like leeway, or at least like a toe in the door to some of these ideas. A fully dedicated witch has a ton of creative potential, could be really interesting, and it's not like it would be coming out of nowhere. There's a lot of witches and witchcraft in World of Warcraft. Now, remember when I said that some of these were really on the nose when it came to Final Fantasy XIV? This one especially, like even more so than Astrology. Celestial Lancer. Warrior that uses spears and titan magic. They are empowered by the gods for quick jumps and strikes. So like straight up, that's just Dragoon. But I don't think this would be a class. I think it could possibly just be a specialization, a hero spec for, say, Warrior. Warrior already has some jumping capabilities when it comes to things like Heroic Leap or things like that. I could easily see like an additional ability be added for Celestial Lancer for Warrior. Make it a spec that applies to, say, Fury and Arms, and it's just like quick jump or something. I think of all the ones we've talked about so far, Celestial Lance is the one that screams hero spec the most to me. And while, yeah, it is pretty much just Dragoon from home from Final Fantasy XIV and Final Fantasy overall, I'm not opposed to adding it. It could be really cool. World of Warcraft is at its best when it looks at what the competition is doing and just pretty much, you know, takes it and puts their own spin on it. Quite a few of these so far have been kind of Titan-based, which to me sounds like, hey, we want to add a new class for, say, the last Titan, since we're going to Northrend, which has a ton of Titan facilities. Got to imagine it's a bit late in the game to just be theorizing as to what the new class could be for, say, Midnight, and I don't think it would make much sense to add something like Astrology or Prismatic or, say, Celestial Lancer in Midnight, which is the Void and Light themed expansion. These feel like they are more Titan-inspired, and they would fit the last Titan more, or even an expansion after that. Now, one that has been requested since time immemorial, Battlemage. Battlemages empower their weapons with the might of the elements to aid their allies, weaken foes, and create constructs to control the battlefield. Pretty much Tamu Enhancement Shaman. Look, you know I'm right. You know I'm right. Now, having said that, though, I think the class aesthetic of what a Battlemage could be appeals more to me than, say, Shaman. I don't know how you would necessarily make this distinct enough from Enhancement Shaman. Maybe it's just a hero spec, but, like, at that point, it just sounds like I'm an Enhancement Shaman, and my hero spec is Enhancement Shaman, but, like, you sketched over it a bit. Don't get me wrong, there are ways to make this unique and interesting. It's just, I don't know if, like, compared to all the other potential additions you could add to World of Warcraft, when it comes to new classes, that Battlemage is the one screaming to me the most, despite the fact that it's been heavily requested for a long time. It's just we kind of have versions of what this already is in-game. Next up, though, we have Artificer. Melee-based tanks, damage dealers, and healers that use a mix of handmade machines and Titan technology. Mechanic reactive gear is the foundation of their power, while utilizing new weapon types like extendable flails or reactive shields. This class is on the front lines of battle and protects and supports their team with their inventions. This one seems way more involved and way more thought out than a lot of the other ones. Besides, like, Bard, I think there's a few of them that you can just tell are a bit more, let's say, down the pipeline from Blizzard. Things like Battlemage felt very conceptual, while things like Artificer, Witch, or Bard, or even like Astrology are way more thought out, which to me makes me feel as if they're leaning more towards those ideas than anything else. Now, we will get to Tinker, but not entirely sure what the main difference is between Tinker and Artificer, especially when we get to Tinker later on. Like, that's based more so not necessarily on Gnomish and Goblin technology, but Titan technology, and that's kind of what Artificer's sounding like here, though the idea of reactive shields could be really cool for tanking. I think Artificer's one of the ones so far that I'm most interested in, though again, it is also entirely possible that this could could just be a hero spec for, say, Tinker or something like that, since Tinker's been kind of the talk of the town lately, especially with Undermined coming up. See, you would think we'd be done by now, but no, we still have quite a few of these left. They are really, assuming this is a real survey at the end of it all, they are really throwing a lot of ideas at the wall, and quite a few of these look rather interesting to me. Leyweaver. Oh, Leyweaver. Leyweavers are connected via ley lines to the natural powers of Azeroth. Their connection to these arcane power lines allows them to move quickly along them and to manipulate the unseen energies that flow through everything. They help allies deal damage to enemies or buff and debuff as wanted. Remember what I was talking about when I said some of these feel more conceptual than really thought out? Leyweaver kind of is one of those. It's like you took ley lines and you just made that a class. And when I read this, the first thing I thought was, can you put down ley lines in a boss room before the fight, and then just at any point throughout the fight just be zipping across all of them? Because that could be really funny, watching all the world first raiders have to scramble to make 15 Leyweavers just from ability. Now this one's interesting to me because it's Gunslinger. Now you may be going, Jmulls, did we just have Gunna not too long ago? Yeah, I think this could be a hero spec. Cunning and agile melee combatants that use 2 pistols at once, because apparently just dumb. Their sharp eyes allow them to see the weak points of enemies and deal with them quickly. Melee screams to me, hey, this could be a hero spec for, say, Rogue, because of Outlaw, or it could be a hero spec or just one of the specializations for, say, Gunna, or vice versa. That's what it feels like to me. Speaking of things that just sound like a hero spec, Titan Killer. Besides sounding awesome, Titan Killers combine the sword fragments of, Lord help me, Tashalach and Gorable to use the powers of Gorshalach and connect to the cosmic powers of the Titan to destroy any threat to Azeroth. I like how to actually understand what's going on here, you need to have 5 layers of lore knowledge. Look, it sounds awesome, right? This just sounds like a hero spec to me. I can't imagine you would take an entire class and the class's identity, unless it's a hero's talent, a hero class, is just hey, we grabbed some sword fragments of this thing and this thing, threw them together, bit of duct tape, glued WD-40, called it a GG, here you go. Maybe a hero spec for warrior or something like that. That could be cool. Now one I'm particularly interested in. Necromancer. Summon an army of undead that follow your commands and overrun enemies in combat. They combine different summoning spells to build the perfect army. A lot of people throughout the years have said, how can you make this fundamentally different to, say, Warlock or even Unholy Death Knight? And I think the answer lies in the wording here. If the idea is that you build a veritable swarm of undead, you could do it kind of like they do in Diablo and say, hey, you can construct an army of this size, but you pick out specifically what the undead are, or how many of them there are. Say, hey, I can have, for instance, 15 undead unit points. I can have 5 points of that be divvied up for ghouls, maybe another, say, 4 be divvied up for 2 abominations, and I spend, say, the rest of my points on liches or something like that. And then depending upon what undead you have out, they could have different effects or generate different abilities and passives for you, and maybe that could be the gameplay of Necromancer. I think there are ways to make this unique enough from, say, Demo Warlock or Unholy Death Knight to make it stand out and be cool and interesting. I wouldn't say that this could be a hero spec, mainly because I just don't know what it would be for. You could argue Warlock, but that's mostly fell stuff. I can't imagine a hero spec would turn a Death Knight into a range class, because you have to imagine that's what Necromancer would be, because it's not like Necromancer's an unknown entity in World of Warcraft. They've been in the game since Warcraft 3, if not even before that. But I don't know what the specs necessarily would be here. Maybe you have one spec based around lesser numbers of undead that are more big and powerful, or another one that is more so focused on numbers than individual brute strength, and then the third one being some kind of combination of the two, or sacrificing those undead to fuel yourself. Maybe that could be it. A lot of potential there with Necromancer. Next up, though, is the big one. The talk of the town, the one that has been theorized since time immemorial, and has been talked about all so much recently because of the upcoming journey to undermine the capital city of the goblins. Tinker, genius inventors who have uncovered the secrets of the Titan technology and using it to protect their allies, heal wounds, and attack enemies. Through their understanding of machines, Tinkers can create inventions, custom-made skills and spells, control mech suits, and deploy mechanical constructs to create an advantage in combat. This could be an absolute nightmare to balance if you really are leaning into the idea of make your own spell and skill, right? I do not envy the people who have to balance this thing, theoretically speaking. However, let's just take that idea and that concern of how do you balance this thing, and let's just put that to the side. This sounds awesome. Create your own spells and skill, get a mech suit. Dude, I can play Armored Core in World of Warcraft. The best thing ever would be if I can then mount up in that mech suit and use that as a mount, and then deploy mechanical constructs to create an advantage in combat. This just has so much potential. It is a bit interesting that the idea is that it's rooted in Titan technology. I kind of prefer that over just, say, Gnomish and Goblin technology. I don't know, this just to me has so much creative potential. And of the ones listed here, I think it's the one I'm most excited for. Next up, though, and we're almost done, I swear, we have Warden, versatile armored hunters who use their art of chakrams and traps, devastating range and melee attacks employ. Probably a bit of translation error there, but we know the idea of wardens, because, you know, night elves. This to me sounds like it could just be a hero talent for, say, Hunter, though, you know, Sentinel already exists. And maybe we go in Jmulls, those are completely different. Yeah, but they are both, like, based on night elves, pretty much. And theoretically, do you want 2 of possible 4 hero talent specs for Hunter just to be based on night elf lore, despite all the other, you know, races that can be hunters in this game? I don't know if that's the play. Warden does sound cool, though. Always one of my favorite subsets of night elves myself. Could be interesting, just not high up in my priority list. And next you have Spellbreaker. I remember this one from Warcraft 3. Melee characters that specialize in the combat against magical powers. They ward magic, but they can also empower their gear with the magic of their enemies to improve their combat capabilities. Does kind of sound like it would be based for, say, PvP or something like that. I'm not entirely sure what would happen if a Spellbreaker goes up against something that only uses, say, physical attacks, especially if you're in a raid environment or a dungeon environment, something like that. Are you just, like, out of luck, waiting for everyone else to kill the thing as you stand there with, like, pom-poms cheering on the crowd? And then you become the Giga Chad coming in, muscles like a mountain range coming in just to mop up any boss that dares to be a mage. Again, could be interesting, does kind of sound more like a hero talent spec to me than anything else. Also does sound, alongside Warden, way less detailed than the other ones, or at least some of them. But yeah, I think quite a few of these do sound rather interesting. The standouts to me, obviously, are, say, Tinker, Necromancer, Artificer, Astrology, and Witch. Even Bard. Again, I like quite a few of these. And if, like, any of these got announced, I wouldn't be particularly displaced. Though I will say, and this is just a personal thing for me, I do wish we had more Void-themed stuff, especially coming into, say, Midnight. Because I think Shadow Priest is really cool. God, I would love an actual melee class that is based around using Void and Shadow magic. Death Knight is, well, for death. And you have Paladins for light. I would love pretty much just something that is, well, I guess a melee Shadow Priest. I think that could be really cool. And, like, the closest we get in-game right now is, say, roll a Void Elf Warrior or something along those lines. Like a Void Elf Blood Death Knight, maybe? Who knows? There's a part of me that wants to speculate that maybe when it comes to Midnight, we get a few extra hero talent specs that are based around Void and Light. There is a bit of concern where it's like, okay, if we're going to do a Void-based melee class, how do we not just make that Dark Paladin? My retort to that would be, why not? I think that could generate plenty of hype in of itself, but I do see the issue. It's just something I've always wanted in World of Warcraft, but especially now with characters and prominent characters at that, like Illyria, I would like to see more Void-centric classes or specs, since that's always been a pillar of World of Warcraft I found particularly interesting. But yeah, I would argue not to read too much into any of this and view it as nothing more than just, say, idle speculation. I think, like, at best we would probably get one of these, or maybe we get a couple of them way down the line. Don't view this to be like an immediate thing whatsoever, but I think it's fun to speculate and see where their head could possibly be at and the direction they could possibly want to go in the future when it comes to adding new classes to this game. But yeah, overall, cool stuff. think I'll call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and help support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe, have a great day. Leave a comment down below with what you would want most out of a new class for World of Warcraft, and which of these options that we have talked about today interest you the most. I'd love to hear your thoughts and hear your opinions and hear your perspectives. Stay safe, have a great day. I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.